Triple H tested positive for COVID on Monday, and he was not present backstage at Monday Night Raw. He was at home following COVID protocol, as he was on Friday for SmackDown. But he is said to be feeling fine. He was on the phone with people at the shows, making sure things ran smoothly. Road Dogg was there in person. He was running the show in his place. At least on Monday he was. The same Road Dogg who less than 3 months ago was on Busted Open Radio begging Tony Khan for a job. And the same Road Dogg who was on his Oh You Didn't Know podcast this week, revealing that Billy Gunn wanted to be part of the DX reunion on Raw 2 weeks ago, and as late as the day before, thought that he was going to be able to do it. He said, "It broke my heart, and I believe it broke his too. In all actuality, Hunter was not happy about it either. Shawn and X-Pac weren't either. We wanted the band all back together. China was there in spirit. That didn't happen. From what I understand, and I'm not in those inner circles anymore, and for my sanity, rightfully so, I don't know the exact reason, but I was told everything that we could do was done, and we couldn't come together. During the day prior, I texted him. I said, hey, are you going to be able to make it? Have you found out any answers yet? He said, yes, I'm in. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Literally before I landed at home, I found out he was not in. I texted him back and he wasn't happy either. It just didn't work. I understand that WWE and AEW were not huge fans of each other from a business standpoint. It was a big deal and I feel like he got ripped off and didn't live it with us. I'm sorry for that. I know he is too. Billy did an interview with Sports Illustrated, and he was asked about the whole thing, and he said, of course, I would have liked to have been there, but I understand that I work for another company. Says, it was a collective decision. I'm not putting it on anyone. I'm not sour about it. We're two separate companies, and it just didn't work out. So that's the nice diplomatic answer there from Daddy Ass. Now, per Dave Meltzer in this week's Observer, WWE and AEW did have talks, and it did not involve any money being exchanged. All Tony Khan asked for. And just keep in mind who is likely feeding this information to Dave on this. Tony agreed to it, but he asked that on the air, on Monday Night Raw, they acknowledge that Billy was from AEW, or thank AEW for allowing him to appear, some such language. But there had to be some kind of wording that AEW allowed him to appear. Not unlike how WWE mentioned Impact Wrestling when they had Mickie James as the Impact Knockouts champion in this year's Royal Rumble match. So, of course, WWE doesn't consider Impact competition the way that they do AEW, so the two situations are not exactly the same. At that point, WWE stalled in giving them a yes or a no answer, and at the very last minute, they would not agree to their request. Sean Ross Sapp on Fightful Select said the talks were far enough along that WWE booked travel arrangements for Billy to come to Brooklyn for the show, and they even considered putting an AEW logo somewhere on the screen, maybe in the lower third, during the segment, but at the last minute they decided against it. Maybe they didn't want a building full of scissor me daddy ass chants in Brooklyn. Maybe that's what it was. Would it have been cool to see him on the show? Yes, it would have been cool. But why would... Here's my issue with this. Why would Tony Khan even entertain the idea when the last time he allowed Billy on their television, Triple H called AEW a pissant company? Not only that, but he had a meltdown at the Brawl Out media scrum long after CM Punk took his muffins and went to the back, where he was sitting there at the dais, he was sitting at the table and he's talking about how badly WWE treated him. I was nice to them, they weren't nice to me. He was all bent out of shape about them running 2 shows Labor Day weekend, knowing full well that they run their all-out pay-per-view that weekend. You could tell how offended he was by that. It's like a personal affront to him. He compared himself to Jim Crockett that weekend and how Vince McMahon tried to fuck over Crockett with all the shit that he pulled back in the day, booking Survivor Series opposite Starrcade, and then the first Royal Rumble against the Bunkhouse Stampede. He's out there comparing himself to Jim Crockett. Now I know how it feels. Between that and all of the reports of contract tampering, he was so mad. He sat there at the scrum and he said, I'm not going to sit back and take this fucking shit. Those were his exact words. This is the president and CEO of the company sitting there saying this. A month later, he's going to be like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Billy can be on the show. Billy can go play with his friends. Get the hell out of here. Are you kidding me with this? Tell Billy he's grounded, take the scissors away from him, send him to his room, and tell the other parents to go fuck themselves. He never should have taken their call to begin with, if that's how he really feels. Karl Anderson will not be defending his never openweight championship November 5th at the New Japan show in Osaka after all of the wondering, is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? Is WWE going to let him work the show? It's not happening because he was booked for Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia that same day, tagging with Luke Gallows and AJ Styles. They're going to be taking on the Judgment Day. The announcement was made on Raw Monday night, and that there's just no chance that he could have worked both shows anyway because it's something like a 15-hour flight between Osaka and Riyadh. And in a video posted to Anderson's Instagram, he and Gallows were clearly in character, explaining why he won't be defending the title. Gallows said, "New Japan Pro Wrestling, few questions. Are we the OG Bullet Club? Yes. Are we the world-famous Good Brothers? Yes. Are we repping OC on Monday Night Raw? Yes. And do all bookings still go through the big LG when it comes to Bright Lights, when it comes to the Good Brothers? Yes, they do. You guys announced Bright Lights, the Machine Gun, Karl Anderson for a match on November 5th. Guess what? We're a little double booked because you didn't run it through me. So he ain't coming. We're not coming unless it's our time. Unless it's on our time." And Anderson then spoke. He said, "New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen, I love what you've done for the Good Brothers through these years. But let me tell you something, I am the greatest never openweight champion of all time. I only work when the lights are bright, and November 5th, we ain't coming. We'll come on our time. The Machine Gun will tell you when I am coming to defend my championship." And Rocky Romero, who is the liaison between New Japan and a lot of the foreign talents, he's been the bridge between New Japan and AEW since they started working together. He posted a comment in response to the video saying, "Fuck you, dude, return the title." They're all clearly working here. If I had a guess, it ends with Anderson working the Tokyo Dome in January. This is my guess here. He will not work a match for New Japan until January 4th. And that is where he will drop the championship. Now, maybe he told WWE before he signed that he wanted to work the Dome show, and they said, fine, but that's the only show you're going to work? And that's a much bigger show than the one next month. If I had to choose between the two, I would say, yeah, I'll work the Tokyo Dome and not, some random show in Osaka. Because if this was a shoot, New Japan would have already stripped him of the title. And I also just cannot imagine that Anderson would fuck them over and would fuck over Rocky Romero like this and then be cutting kayfabe promos on them. Right? I mean, anything's possible, but you talk about burning a bridge. If this were real, you talk about burning a bridge. That would be like torching the bridge and then dropping a nuclear warhead on it. WWE needed them to work the Saudi show. They're turning it into an angle. Vic Joseph on NXT last week, because the Good Brothers made a cameo, he even acknowledged on TV that Karl Anderson is still a champion in Japan. He didn't say New Japan, but he said he's a champion in Japan right now. And like I said, I think he'll be allowed to work the Dome show and drop the belt the right way. I have to think he would have cleared all of this with WWE before he put pen to paper. If he had any shred of respect for Gedo and New Japan, then that was already taken care of before he signed.